I stood on the porch, one hand resting on the railing, watching Braden lift the last suitcase into the back of their SUV. Linda was already in the front seat, adjusting her sunglasses like she was getting ready for a fashion shoot, not a weekend drive. Her mother sat in the back, a scarf tied tight under her chin, as if they were heading out on a yacht instead of Interstate 5. Braden shut the trunk with a thud and turned toward me with a quick, distracted grin. "Thanks for holding down the fort, Mom. Don't forget to water the blueberries. Oh, and the drip line by the tomatoes is acting up again. You know what to do." He said it like I was the help, like he was ticking things off a list. I nodded once, said nothing. My throat was dry. My hand tightened around the porch rail. "No cell service where we're headed," Linda chimed in, not bothering to look at me. "Completely unplugged. It's supposed to be good for you." Her mother gave a little wave, barely lifting her hand. She smiled like it cost her something. I stood there and watched their car roll down the gravel drive, dust kicking up behind them until they disappeared around the bend. The silence they left behind was sharp. Back inside, I found a note stuck to the fridge, Braden's handwriting in those big, blocky letters. "Don't forget to water the back beds." Right beneath it, I noticed the thermostat had been turned up to 78. He always complained I kept the house too cold. The dining table was still cluttered with their plans, maps of wineries, a printout for a couple's spa day, a cooking class by the sea. I pulled out my usual chair, the one with the faded floral cushion I sewed years ago, and sat down. Later that evening, I checked the family group chat. Pictures from their road trip had already started rolling in. One had the caption, "Beach-bound, everyone had tapped the heart. No one had messaged me." I folded the dish towel in my lap and stepped outside, the light fading, the air cooling just enough to sting. I walked toward the rose bush I'd planted years ago, back when I still believed things might bloom just because you loved them enough. The next morning, I reached for my gardening gloves, the good pair. Leather-padded palms, with my initials stitched in the corner by Cal, back when love was shown in small, thoughtful ways. But they were missing. I checked the usual spots, the shelf over the tools, the mudroom hooks, gone. In their place hung a frayed, nearly useless pair, the right thumb split wide open. It took me a moment too long to connect the dots. Then I remembered Linda's canvas bag yesterday, bulging at the top with something soft. She must have taken them, by accident, or maybe not. I pressed my lips together and slid my hands into the worn gloves anyway. The weeds didn't care how well stitched the gloves were. The dirt wasn't picky. By the blueberry bushes, I knelt and fixed the sputtering drip line Braden had mentioned. My knees groaned in protest as I crouched, the kind of pain that feels more like a memory than a warning. The hose let out one final hiss, then steadied. I straightened up and looked toward the orchard, where the sunlight had just begun to pierce through the morning mist, brushing the trees in a soft gold. I moved slowly toward the western garden beds, past the trellis where Cal used to tie the tomato vines using old shoelaces. Some still fluttered there, faded but loyal. A breeze swept through, and the sharp scent of mint filled the air. Wild mint planted long ago by Cal to help ease my headaches. He'd warned it would take over everything. I had laughed then. Now I knelt beside it, plucked a sprig, and rolled it between my fingers until the oil scented my skin. I sat back on my heels, looking over the land that had fed us, sheltered us, held our joy and our grief. Land that, despite everyone's assumptions, still belonged to me. On my way back toward the house, I passed the kitchen window and caught a glimpse of something strange, a yellowed paper corner sticking out from Braden's desk drawer. I almost let it go. Figured it was just another seed catalogue or a leftover utility bill. But something about it tugged at me. I opened the drawer slowly, careful not to let it creak, and pulled the paper free. It was an insurance policy, one I'd never seen before. On the front, Braden Welby and Linda Welby. My name wasn't there. Stapled to the top was a note in Linda's neat, looping handwriting. Needs updating after Mom signs. I stared at the words like they might rewrite themselves. The policy was dated 2 weeks ago. Right around the time Braden mentioned needing to meet a notary. Just some emergency prep, he'd said. Nothing serious. I slid the packet back exactly how I found it. Sat still for a moment, hands clasped tight, breathing through the heavy pressure building behind my ribs. Later that afternoon, Willa from next door stopped by. She brought over a jar of marmalade. She always brings something small since Cal passed. It's her way of saying she still sees me. I was out by the rose bush, watering slow and steady, when she came up chatting like always. Then she chuckled and said, "Braden told me you're about ready to hand over the farm. That must feel like a big step." My hand froze mid-pour. "Is that so?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Oh, yes," she said with a smile. "He mentioned something about cottages in the orchard, said you were ready to slow down, retire a bit." I gave her a smile too, the kind that looks polite but doesn't reach your eyes. After she left, I went inside and stared up at the photo above the kitchen sink. Braden at 8 years old, dirt on his cheeks, grinning wide like he couldn't believe the world was his. I never said I was handing over the farm. But somehow, staying quiet had started to sound like saying yes. I walked into the study and turned on the old laptop. The fan let out a tired whir, like even it wasn't thrilled about digging into what came next. I logged into the farm's financial dashboard and started pulling up records I hadn't touched in years. The file box was heavier than I remembered. Dust clung to it thick, like time itself had settled on top. I set it in my lap and began flipping through the folders, deeds, water rights, equipment receipts, all neatly labelled in Cal's handwriting. He'd kept everything in order, like someone who believed what you build should last beyond you. Tucked in the back was the old leather-bound ledger we used before we went digital. I hadn't opened it since Cal's funeral. The last entry was mine. April 12th memorial flowers, paid cash. He wouldn't have wanted me to charge the goodbye. My hand shook a little as I wrote a new line beneath it. July 4th unauthorized vacation charges. Farm account 3,244. Hotel, airfare, spa. Initials TH. It wasn't just about the money. It was the assumption behind it. That quiet kind of taking that slips in when no one says no. By night, I was logged into the bank, going through every account, and there it was, just like I feared. Braden had moved the main credit card under his own name. He'd even linked it to the emergency fund I spent years building. I removed him from both. A warning popped up on the screen. This action may affect authorized users. I clicked proceed without blinking. Then I grabbed the lantern and stepped outside. I walked beneath the arbor, the air heavy with the scent of wild mint. Cal planted it years ago, laughing that it would take over everything. It had, and it hadn't asked permission. The moon was full, casting light across the yard as I sat down on the bench. No shouting, no scenes, just a quiet truth. They'd been planning a future that didn't belong to them, but I had plans too. And mine weren't based on assumption, they were real. At exactly 6:02 the next morning, my phone buzzed on the windowsill. I didn't need to look at the screen. I knew that ringtone. Braden. I let it ring once before picking up. His voice came through sharp, cold, and full of panic. "Mom, something's wrong with the cards. None of them are working. We can't pay for the hotel, groceries, nothing. Even the rental cars declined. Did the bank screw something up?" I stood at the window, looking out over the field. The grass was still silver with dew. The mist was just beginning to pull away from the peach trees. "I made some changes," I said, quiet and even. There was a pause. "What do you mean? What kind of changes?" "I updated the accounts," I told him. "Removed your access." This time, the silence lasted longer. Then I heard Linda in the background, her voice rising. "Try the other card, not that one, Just ask her if she can call the bank." Braden came back on the line, his voice rising now too. "You can't just do that, Mom. We had plans. You should have told us." I moved the kettle off the stove before it started to scream. Poured hot water over a sprig of mint I'd picked the night before. "I noticed," I said. Then I hung up. No yelling, no explanations, just done. I stepped out onto the porch with my mug and let the early sun warm my shoulders. The garden beds stretched out ahead, waiting to be watered, still there, still mine. I left them waiting. Instead, I walked down toward the peach trees. A few branches were already sagging, heavy with early fruit. Cal used to tie them up with old shoelaces and prop them with worn wooden stakes. I spotted one still leaning against the fence, sun-bleached but solid. I eased it under a drooping limb. Some things just need support, others need trimming, and some things, they need to be cut loose altogether. That afternoon, I pulled out my old address book. My finger paused on a name I hadn't seen in years, Emmeline Vache, attorney at law, Cal's friend, and once mine, I picked up the phone. She answered herself. Her voice hadn't changed a bit. "Therona," she said, "it's been a while." "Not long enough," I said. The next morning, I pulled into Emmeline's office, a converted carriage house tucked behind the old county library. She opened the door in muddy work boots, holding a coffee mug that said, "Trust me, I read the fine print. I couldn't help it." I smiled. Inside, the light came through lace curtains that looked like they'd been there since before either of us was born. We sat at the long oak table near the back, and I laid it all out, the insurance papers, the bank printouts, the credit card statements, and the original deed Cal's and mine, signed in 1989. Emmeline didn't ask for backstory. She didn't lean into the drama. She just wanted the facts, and I gave them to her, calm, clear, start to finish. When I was done, she folded her glasses and leaned forward. "Do you want to disinherit him, Therona?" I shook my head. "No, I want to redirect." And for the next 3 hours, we wrote a new future. The farm, the land that had fed us, held our grief, kept us steady, would go into a living trust. I'd remain in full control while I was alive, and after I was gone, it would all go to something new, the Welby Agricultural Fellowship, a scholarship fund for young farmers across the state. Braden's name didn't come up again. Neither did Linda's. When Emmeline slid the final draft across the table, Her voice was low but steady. "This will hold, legally, financially, and emotionally. You're not cutting out your legacy, Therona. You're protecting it." I signed. On the way out, I paused at the bulletin board in her office. There was an old photo tacked to the corner Emmeline and Cal, standing in front of the county zoning board, fists in the air like rebels with paperwork. They were laughing like they'd just won something worth fighting for. I drove home with the windows down. The breeze caught the edge of the new deed folder on the passenger seat, flipping it open just a little. And for the first time in a long time, my chest felt light. When I pulled into the driveway, the home phone's red voicemail light was blinking. I pressed play. "This is Linda's mother. I thought we had an understanding. Braden said you were finally handing things over. We booked the cabin upgrade based on that. You can't just freeze the cards now." This was supposed to be the year he transferred the deed. No, hello, no, how are you? She didn't even say my name. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Emmeline with a simple subject line: "Intent to defraud." Then I stepped outside and walked down to the grape arbor, the one Cal built the year after Braden was born. The vines had grown thick this year. They wrapped around the beams like they knew what they were here for, like they remembered their purpose, and maybe, finally, I was remembering mine too. That evening, I walked the fence line like I used to, clearing branches, checking the posts, just me and the land, with the warm breath of late summer pressing in across the horizon. As I neared the east gate, something caught my eye. A rental car, idling just beyond the property line. Braden was inside, alone. He didn't get out, didn't wave. Just sat there, engine running, staring toward the house like maybe, somehow, it would all just fix itself. He stayed a few minutes. Then, without a word, turned the car around and drove off. The next morning, I saw footprints in the gravel. They came up to the gate, stopped short of the lock, then turned around. No knock, no call, no apology. But later that afternoon, he came back. No car this time. He must have walked from the gas station. I saw him through the kitchen screen standing there again by the same stretch of fence, sweaty, out of place. His loafers were wrong for this land, and his shirt stuck to his back. He looked around like he expected someone else to be there, someone who hadn't already left. I didn't call out. Instead, I stepped off the porch, a shovel in hand, and walked across the yard toward the gate. I opened it, stepped through, and held the shovel out to him. Not harsh, not warm, just clear. "If you need something from this land," I said, "start here." His brow furrowed. "What is this? Some kind of punishment?" I didn't flinch. "No, this is the only transaction left." He looked at the shovel, then back at me. The wind kicked up behind him, swirling dry dust around his shoes, lifting it into his sleeves. But he didn't move, didn't reach for it. "You're being cruel," he said, voice low. I tilted my head, steady. "No, I'm being clear." And for a brief second, I saw him not as the man who'd tried to take what wasn't his, but as the boy who used to run barefoot through irrigation ditches, who used to fall asleep under the plum trees with dirt on his face. But that boy was gone, and the man left behind believed that inheritance came through assumption. "Linda's mom already put down a deposit with the design firm," he muttered. "We had plans. You didn't even warn us." I stood firm. I don't owe warnings to people spending what was never theirs. He didn't respond. He turned, hands clenched, and walked back down the gravel road. I watched until the shimmer of heat swallowed him whole. I stayed there for a while, leaning on the shovel as the dust settled behind him. That evening, I walked down to the southern tree line and picked peaches more than I expected for this time of year. I boxed up a few for the weekend market. The rest I packed into baskets for the scholarship students arriving next week. Tomorrow would be full. More to do, more to plant, more to clean. But tonight, the soil felt clean. The air carried the faintest trace of forgiveness. And the gate behind me didn't feel like a line drawn in battle anymore. It was just a gate. At sunrise, the paper was waiting in the mailbox. The headline stretched across half the page. Welby Farm launches fellowship for young growers statewide. There was a photo me standing beside the new greenhouse, one hand resting on the frame. 3 students next to me, one smiling shyly, the other 2 grinning straight into the light. The article talked about the land, the mission, the future. It spoke of legacy. New beginnings, no mention of credit cards, no mention of Braden, and that was more than fine. I sat on the porch swing and read it twice, once as a woman still healing, once as someone tending something bigger than herself. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. Linda had unfollowed me. Braden had posted a black square. The caption said, "Lesson learned. Don't trust anyone, not even family." I didn't respond. Instead, I clipped the article and pinned it inside the kitchen cupboard right beside Cal's old tomato soup recipe. He would have called the fellowship good ground yielding good fruit. Around noon, Kira arrived, one of our scholarship students, early and eager. She brought seedlings, asked if we had more compost. I showed her the bin. We spent an hour talking about roots and weather and how to read soil by the color of its steam. She didn't ask about Braden. She didn't need to. Later, I walked the orchard path again, stopped by the old bench under the arbor. From there, I could see the upper field. The soil had darkened with summer rich now, forgiving. Braden's shadow no longer touched it. That evening, I baked cornbread with thyme from the back beds. While it cooled, I drafted a letter to the board suggesting we expand the fellowship next spring. The kitchen smelled like harvest, like staying, like something that would outlast me. I placed the letter by the door. Tomorrow I'd walk it to the mailbox, past the rows of peaches, low with the weight of ripeness, ready to be picked. The mornings are quieter now, but not empty. I rise before the sun, brew tea, step outside barefoot, feeling the porch boards cool beneath my feet. The air smells of turned soil and ripening fruit, a scent that once meant work, now means clarity. I've started tying up the peach branches with soft cloth strips. Cal used to joke our orchard was full of trees that didn't know their own strength. I think he meant me too. The students come every weekend now, one at a time or in twos, always with notebooks and questions and easy laughter. I let them learn by doing. I don't hover, I just make space. That's what legacy really is, not what you hold on to, but what you're willing to hand off to the right hands. Braden hasn't come back, not really. He sent one message, "I hope you're proud." I didn't write back. Not because I wasn't proud, but because his hurt wasn't mine to carry anymore. This land doesn't belong to silence now. It belongs to stories, to roots, to effort, to growth. I walk the fence line without flinching. The east gate is just wood and wire. It holds its shape. So do I. In the far corner, under the arbor, I placed a new bench. Not to cover what was lost, but to mark what's next. I carved something into it. A line, Cal said once, when the vines were just starting to rise, plant what outlasts you. This morning, I sat there with my tea, watched the students carry baskets back to the greenhouse. One turned and waved. I lifted my hand in return, palm steady, heart steady. They left me with dirt under my nails and a second chance to bloom. And that was enough.